Hello, everybody. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how I've been managing my classroom in the time of all this craziness, this virus, and everything moving online, just to give some ideas to others who are working to kind of manage their classroom and to share some of the things I considered and the method behind all the madness, if you will. Right now, I'm working with 3 different classes that are all lower level math classes, and the number one consideration that I have in my mind is anything that I create, I want to be making sure that no matter your home circumstances, no matter your economic situation, no matter your background in mathematics, I want to make sure that these are lessons that you can benefit from and that give you an opportunity to succeed in math the same as anybody who has every advantage known to mankind. And when you try to consider the students, especially when you're talking about the students in undergraduate, when you work with students who are in the lower level math classes, the probability that you're going to be working with a non-traditional student increases to quite a bit large amount. For example, if you're going to try to consider which student might have a small child that they're taking care of at home, the chances that you're going to have that kind of student in a lower level math class is going to be much higher than for a higher level math class. If for no other reason than that could possibly have been the original distraction that kept the student from being able to get to a higher math class when they were going through their math classes in high school. If you're trying to talk about which students are going to be possibly taking care of a family member, you're probably going to be looking at the students who are going to be distracted, rightfully so, by trying to take care of that priority, and as a result, like, their classwork and their schoolwork may have suffered, which puts them now in a lower level math class. When you're talking about students who are more easily distracted, those are going to be the students who are going to end up into a lower level math class, because that could be a correlation, if not a causation, for why it is that they perform possibly poorly on tests. So you've got a lot of these different factors to consider, and now that we're moving online, there's even more. What students are paying for when they pay for an education to come to college, oftentimes it's the accreditation, and it's the learning, and it's the engagement aspect. The problem with us currently being online is that engagement aspect becomes quite inhibited when I can only manage so many different factors at a given time. I can only manage the people who have really good Wi-Fi, the people who are able to interact with audio, the people who are able to type fast enough on their keyboard. So you lose a lot of that if you try to hit it from a traditional stance. When you try to compare what I'm doing to other free platforms such as Khan Academy, there's also a lot of benefits that they're currently getting that those other platforms don't offer. And this is not to say that there's anything wrong with Khan Academy. I'm a big fan of it. I've used it a bunch in my classroom. I used it when I was a student, and I like to try to emulate it in a number of different ways. But that's not exactly what I would consider teaching. It provides information. It's a very one-directional kind of communication where Khan is able to speak into the microphone and students are able to watch and interact only by taking their notes, and then later practicing on some practice problems. But the answering questions aspect is severely diminished. I'm starting from a standpoint of not how do you take a classroom and move it into an online format, but how do you challenge a classroom for what it really is. The number one reason why there's a teacher in front of students and why the teacher speaks at the students and why students take notes is because the traditional classroom was developed during a time when books were scarce. And so students were forced to listen to a professor as they professed and as they recited the book, and they were then instructed to copy down their own book in their notes so that when they left the classroom they had that reference as well. We are obviously way past that point right now in current society. There's no reason for students to be working on taking notes that are meticulous and that have every piece of information that a professor says. So when you take that away and say, okay, well, if the information is freely available, what is the teacher providing? The teacher is providing the guidance, the instruction, the pacing, and the ability to handle individual questions individually. Students need to learn how to learn, and teachers can be the mentor figure that helps to promote that learning from an inner locus of control. My current classroom framework was originally a lecture in person kind of class, and that was back when we were face-to-face within my college. We got permission to move on to online, so now we are in an online format, and I did try for a while to do the presenting through Zoom or Blackboard Collaborate, some kind of live lesson. The difficulties began to arise quite quickly, such as the Wi-Fi issues or connectivity issues or students having glitchy audio. And that was really causing there to become an immediate disparity in my class, where students who could receive the lecture were, of course, able to do much better on their homework and have less confusion than the students who were having difficulty connecting in the first place. I was also getting a number of students who were asking for recordings, and recordings are fine, but the recordings of an in-person classroom are far inferior to what you could even get from YouTube. YouTube has a much higher production quality than what I'm able to do when I'm managing a class in person. They have better editing. Sometimes they have better graphics. Versus when you're in my classroom, you're really getting my PowerPoint slides, my notes, my voice, and the interactive aspect. So, how to balance all of this? I finally moved into flipping my classroom. And for those of you who aren't as familiar with that terminology, this is what it means. It means that I am currently pre-recording all of my lectures, and then I am making those available to my students so that they can take advantage of those before they come to class or possibly after they come to class. And then our in-class time is being reserved solely for either a check-in, where I can really get a one-on-one feel for how students are doing, where I can support them with their homework questions, or where if they are currently caught up on the homework and feeling good, they can choose to watch the pre-recorded videos. When students do come into class, they join up and I have a moment to kind of check in with them, and I ask them what it is that they're planning on working on today, how it is that the last class went, where they're at in their studies, so that I can kind of pace them and I can incentivize some of them to possibly come to office hours, and so that I can answer individual questions in a more private manner, or at least in a more individual manner. And then what I do is I assign them into a breakout group. So I can create these little mini sessions within either Zoom or within Blackboard Collaborate, where I can group students into, you could think of them almost like stations. So I can ask them to go and join with group one, and group one would be dedicated to students who are working on their homework. So that way, if I'm working with another student and they have a question, they can work with each other and promote that support system within each other and not feel like they're going through things alone. If they're working on their lectures, I can put them with a similar group that gets disturbed obviously less often, since it's a more kind of passive activity, and that way they're not getting interrupted with audio from anybody else. And then I can go through and I can just kind of check in group by group, and they can always raise their hand and I can stop in to be able to help them, either if they have questions about the lecture videos or if they have questions about the homework that they're working on. I've been able to find a huge advantage of doing this in that there's significantly less audio disturbances from students forgetting to turn their microphone off or on. If students do have to leave the session and I'm trying to hold a live presentation for them, it makes things a little bit awkward, where I'm often calling on people and maybe they're having technical difficulties and they're unable to connect. Maybe they've stepped away from the computer for a moment, but it holds the whole class down. Now this isn't a concern for that. And now every single student is working at their own pace behind the scenes. I do upload my lectures, and to keep them entertaining, I do try to interspace them with examples and everything, but I also use an online system called EdPuzzle. I can upload my videos to EdPuzzle, and then I can interspace the exact same questions that I would normally be asking students in my class. So you can see that, for example, in this video, I'm going to be going through the notes that they can then copy along at their own time when they have the ability to study more effectively. And then interspersed throughout all of these are some questions that I was able to put, such as share what you think you already know about quadratics. Hint, we worked on them earlier. So this is a place that kind of keeps them engaged, reminds them about little aspects to put in their notes, lets me review my videos so that if I forgot something, students can not kind of suffer from the live aspect of lecture when I think I said something and they didn't hear it. They can now we can reassure the important points by adding in little notes, questions, and formative assessments, or little assessments that kind of allow both the student to check in on their understanding and allow me to later look back at some data and to say, or do we need to go back and look at that again? I then take it from EdPuzzle and I put it into Peardeck. So if you actually go over to Peardeck, there is a free feature, which is very nice. And then within Peardeck, I can put all of my videos, and I can also integrate in some games. I can integrate in some review sessions. So they can manage these later or before class. But then when it comes to the video, they're able to watch this video and I have it integrated with my EdPuzzle. And as I said, these questions pop up automatically as a chance to keep them engaged, keep them from zoning out, and to remind them of the important information from class. So they get to watch these. I post this up onto our learning management system, Blackboard, so they can access it when they need, along with the notes that they can choose to either print off or they can copy beforehand if they just want to copy along with the video. But having these flipped lectures is really, really helpful because it helps to diminish that inequity. Now students who are taking care of a small one at home can wait to watch these lecture videos after the small one goes to bed. If they get interrupted in the middle of lecture, they don't have to feel like they're missing out. If they are in any ways feeling like they need to slow down the video or they need to add subtitles, they can do that easily without having to ask me, and they can rewatch things as often as they want without having to feel like they're holding the class back. With me pre-recording my lectures, I only go out so far so as to make sure that if my students have questions, I'm not already prepped into, the second month from now, when the things that I'm delivering right now aren't making sense. But because this is my first time teaching this class, I'm still developing these guided notes that I give to students, and I'm still working on my delivery of this material. And on top of that, I'm trying to coordinate with a number of other instructors, which means that I need to look into their tests and look into their assigned homeworks and look into their final exams to really understand which aspects are being stressed for these coordinators and for these instructors, so that I can mirror that. What this pre-recording of my lectures allows me to do is to get a couple of days ahead of the class so that I can make sure that when students do access the lectures, they're well edited, they have everything that they need in there, the notes have been adjusted and edited and are available, and the homework that's going to be due at the end of the week matches everything that I deliver in the videos. So everything is nice and kind of pruned, curated, and edited so that there's very little confusion as students kind of self-manage their way through a lot of this learning and material. So now that I have the time free to be able to do individual check-ins, I can monitor student performance, I can interact with them for their individual concerns. There's now not a concern with Wi-Fi because I simply need to be able to perform a check-in with students, which just simply means that they don't have to be listening and available or in a quiet environment. They just have to be able to talk with me for a moment and let me know how things are going. I do take attendance, but attendance is only to the point of, did we do a check-in? So if a student can only do a check-in with me by calling me on the phone and logging into the online conference that way, that works out just fine. And also this provides me with an opportunity to be able to excuse student absences, because if they are able to instead attend my office hours, we're able to still perform the exact same check-in. Again, these are students who joined up with a class thinking that it was going to be a face-to-face class, and so they had reserved these times in their schedule. Now when they are at home, the circumstances have changed. They might not be privy to as much of an environment conducive to learning, so they might need to have a little bit more flexibility and be able to check in a semi-unregular basis, so long as they're still able to provide all the information in a routine fashion. I see that there's no difference between them being able to check in on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday versus Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday. As far as homework goes, currently we are using an online homework system, which again students can access. I make everything available after class on Wednesday, or I say that by the end of class on Wednesday, it should have all the information that they need to be able to complete the homework, and I have it due on Sunday. I want to kind of think of the student who is trying to go to college despite all of the circumstances that may be preventing them, and if I was that student, oftentimes I would find that I would need the weekend as a means of kind of catching up, and during the week I'd probably be trying to tread water. So that's why I like to always have the weekend as an option for people, but I like to make things available a little bit before the weekend in the case that they are a traditional student. That way they can try to get their home. It incentivizes them to get their homework done earlier so that they can enjoy the weekend, and that's a nice life skill for them to develop softly as they're going through college. I take attendance as a means of assuring that students are reaching out and providing me with evidence that they've been able to access the material, since it does count towards their grade. If they get 100%, it's really a means of us both sharing in the belief that by attending class and by trying to access the material, there has been some learning that happened simply by default. But at the very least, if a student is going to try to join and then fake their attendance and they're just there to do their check-in, at least we've been able to have that moment to be able to have a personal bond and say, if you need anything, I am here for you. You of course are empowered, and in this situation there's nothing I can do about requiring your attendance since I can't be on the other end of the monitor, but I do want to let you know that if you choose to be here, I will make your time worthwhile, and if you choose not to be here, when you eventually do return, I will be here to help support you as much as we can, despite the deficit that you're going to be running if you're not in class. Now, I know the number one concern that teachers are going to have if they were to adopt a similar style to mine would be about the cheating. I want to make a strong argument against the idea that students cheat in order to get a better grade. I strongly believe that students do not cheat in order to get a better grade, and here's why. Last semester, I was forced online for teaching as the virus began to spread and as all of our universities took precautions, and we had the last half of the semester online, where there was very little ability for us to control against cheating, and there was very little ability for us to proctor exams effectively. Come the final exam, when I gave it to students, I'll tell you what happened. There was a little bit of struggle within my students. The students who were normally getting A's at the final exam, got B's. The students who normally were getting B's got C's. The students who were getting C's got A's. And the number of students who were getting D's and F's also got A's. So what this tells me is if students were all cheating in order to get a better grade, or if cheating was used by students to get a better grade, then all of my students should have gotten A's. But that wasn't the case. The A's, went down, the B's went down, some of the C's went down, and then my lower C's, D's, and F's all got A's. Why is it that my low C students, my D students, and my F students got A's? It wasn't just about them trying to get a better grade, it was because they felt desperate. Students don't cheat to get a better grade, students cheat when they feel desperate. So my suggestion for the teaching community at large is let's use this as an opportunity not to make students feel desperate. When students feel desperate, they will go for the path of least resistance in order to make sure that they don't get punished for poor academic performance. But students who feel like they have a chance to succeed in class will study, they will perform, and they will attempt things with integrity. So I think the solution is maybe to not treat this problem so shallowly by saying that we need to force every student's hand into being honest, and that instead we need to explore why are students choosing not to be honest. And I think very rarely is it from a standpoint of just simply thinking that that's the easiest path. They understand the consequences. They understand that just giving an answer that they found off of Google is very risky and could be easily checked. Students cheat when they feel desperate, not when they just simply desire a better grade.